morning, everybody. I'm really happy to have you for this webinar with the BNC Club. Please, if you're not muted already upon your entry in the webinar, you need to mute yourself because then it's going to be easier. So we are live from Shanghai. Well, I'm in London, Zoe is in Paris, but Lucy is in Shanghai. And so you can see the view from her flat as we speak. It's 6 p.m. in Shanghai, and we're going to start with showing you the view of this town and from and introduce then to you the talk of the webinar. So the BNC Club is really happy to welcome you to Shanghai. We had to organize this webinar earlier than usual because of the time difference. So it's 10 a.m. for us, but in Shanghai it's 6 p.m. and it's dark. And the idea is to present a sculpture park, which is in Ji'an. And that was filmed before because otherwise it would have been dark. So then we have a fantastic quality film of the park, which is going to be better than being in live in the park because you won't hear Julie, you know, walk around the park and being exhausted. So you will have a fantastic view of the park. And then we, at the end, we're going to present the artist Zoe Vestiaire and her sculpture. For the moment, we're still waiting for other participants to come in the Zoom. And I will start again in like 2 minutes time, 1 minute time, to start this webinar. So you see the view, it's fabulous. And it's in this area that's going to be built the coming Tate Modern. So Julie, that was telling us about the Tate Modern. Okay, 19. Martin, mute. Okay, good morning again. Good morning in London, good afternoon, good evening in Shanghai. Good morning to all of you. You're welcome. We're very happy to welcome you in this webinar from the BNC Club. That's live from Shanghai, and we are going to present a film of the Ji'an Sculpture Park. Ji'an International Sculpture Project is in Ji'an District, which is the historical and cultural heart of Shanghai. Among the artists in the park, you will see Yann Fabre, Jaume Planza, Pascal Martin Taillou, a lot of artists that we know, international artists that we know, Erwin Wurm and Zoe Vestiaire. Julie Chun, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today. You are an independent art historian. You're American. You've moved to Shanghai 10 years ago. And since then, you've been a lecturer. And you lecture frequently for different foreign associations in Shanghai. You are also regularly contributing to this magazine called Yishu, which is a contemporary Chinese art magazine, Canadian magazine, I believe. And you are a scholar, and you know Shanghai very well and Chinese artists, and we are very happy to have you with us today. and to open this new window dedicated to Asian art for the members of the BNC Club. Zoé Vessière, you are a French artist. You've been living 5 years in Shanghai, and now you're supposed to live between Paris and Shanghai, but for the moment you are in Paris. You have a Master of Arts from St. Martin's School of London, but you have graduated from the National INSAD, École Nationale de Supérieure des Arts Décoratifs. We have met 15 years ago or 20 years ago, I don't remember, when you were an art director. And when you moved to Shanghai, you had the opportunity to focus on plastic art and mainly on sculpture. So Julie, we are going now to start the film. Rim, maybe if you can share your screen and present the film. And Julie, it's your turn for an introduction, a presentation of the park that's going to last around 30 minutes. And then we will have the opportunity to, of course, hear Zoé Vessière. You have a chat box, so whatever questions you have, write it in the chat box, and we will have time after for a Q&A. So Julie, it's your time now.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Anne-Pierre. Thank you so much, Zoé Vessière, and welcome everyone to Shanghai. I am intimately aware of this park. I've been writing about it for many years, and I'd like to take you with me on this journey. So let's rock and roll. We can start. So the Jing'an Sculpture Park is named after the district of Jing'an, and it's located in the center of the city of Shanghai. The address is 128 Shimen Arlu, where Beijing Road crosses. The park was opened on September 1st, 2010 to support the 2010 Shanghai Expo's campaign, Better City, Better Life. The park encompasses 110 acres or 72,000 square meters, and it's opened every day from 6 a.m. to 8:30 p.m. and is completely free of charge. So when we're talking about a public park and public space, this really constitutes as one. What you're seeing now is the sculptural works by the American-French artist Armand, born 1928 and who passed away in 2005. The sculptures were first installed when the park was opened in 2010. They were not new commissions, but rather his older works from 1988. Armand's sculptures have been acquired by the city and remain as permanent collections of the park. The Jing'an Sculpture Park and the project are funded and maintained by the unified support from the Jing'an District People's Government, the Office of the Shanghai Urban Sculpture Committee, with curatorial services and artistic support provided by Purple Roof Gallery, a private commercial gallery. What you see here now are the sculptural works by Willem de Voye, a Belgian artist born 1965. He uses Corten steel, which is a type of a weathered steel, and builds these cultural cathedral-like edifices. What you're seeing now is a calligraphy master who is writing poetry and Chinese chengyu, which is an idiom, on the sidewalk using the brushes that are made specifically for this purpose and water. The park is truly a public space that is used by people of all ages. What you're witnessing here is what we call IE dancing. These are middle-aged ladies who come to the park and they do synchronized line dancing. And you might have just caught that view of the older calligraphy master who's gone in to dunk his brush in this pool of water and then has gone back to write on his sidewalk. This is one of the first works that were installed at the park in 2010. This is by the American sculptor Barbara Edelstein. She's married to the Chinese artist Jiang Jianjun, and she has been residing in Shanghai for almost 20 years. She participated in the inaugural project with the placement of a bronze and water sculpture entitled Elemental Spring Harmony. It is located at one of the park's main entrances. Even today, Barbara is quite pleased with the high level of care and maintenance provided by the district for not only the sculptures, but also the park grounds. Edelstein's intricately coiled and gleaming spiral form rises gently out of a small pool like an abstracted Venus arising from the sea, and is presented to the public in its pristine condition today as the day when the water was first turned on. According to Barbara, Elemental Spring Harmony is inspired by the willow leaf, plants, seeds, and roots she found in the area in the park, and is presented as an abstract bronze sculpture that is both leaf and branches extending from the base of the water. She states, quote, "Water is life to us. We cannot live without water." In many of Edelstein's sculptures, the pumping mechanism is well obscure that viewers often overlook that the artwork is manually crafted. She explains, quote, "Nature becomes part of the work, but you don't see the ego in there. My work looks like nature, but it can't actually be purely natural," end quote. Edelstein divides her time between Shanghai and New York, although currently, due to the pandemic, she is here teaching at NYU Shanghai. She's familiar with the challenges involved in public art in the East as the West. She believes that organizers of the Jing'an Sculpture Park acts in the best interest to support the artist. What you see here is the work by the Chinese artist Liang Shaoji, who was born 1945 in Shanghai. For over 30 years, Liang Shaoji's artist assistants have been silkworms, who he feeds, nurtures, and grows. He is a destined bachelor living like a monk in a humble house on top of Tai Mountain. Liang Shaoji directs and guides the movements of the silkworms. They have spun their soft white silk upon shattered mirrors and covered industrial waste that Liang Shaoji excavates from dump sites. Because he could not put silk, which is very fragile material, out in the open space of Shanghai, a place that is constantly besieged by rain and humidity. For his first open-air project, he used large exhaust fume pipes that is covered with tufts of stainless steel, almost like steel wool. The heavy spiral essence of the industrial exhaust pipes resembles the shape of the spiral nautilus shell, which embodies the mathematical sequence of the golden mean. As to why Liang Shaoji is using an object with mathematical sequence, it could be because the sculpture is placed directly in front of Shanghai's Natural History Museum. The museum was not originally located on the premise of the Jing'an Sculpture Park. It was originally in another part of Shanghai, but this new building was constructed in 2015. Liang Shaoji's sculpture occupies a central and strategic space directly in front of the museum in a body of a pool of water. The touch of steel mesh covering gives the impression of gray silk strands covering this unruly man-made pipe. The reflection on the water makes the sculpture made of industrial material seemingly light and ethereal, as if it is floating on this pool of water. The location of the park is maintained very well. On any given day, you could find an army of janitors who are busily sweeping and polishing and cleaning the entire park premise. When I first came to Shanghai in 2011, the park was an open space where families could picnic. But this is China and this is Shanghai with so many people. And so now people are not allowed to go on the grass, and there are security guards who blow the whistle. They keep the grass free of people so that it can be sustained. This work that you are seeing is the sculptural formation that makes a commentary about how China successfully overcame the control of COVID-19, which has caused a global pandemic and is still affecting all nations. We're all in this together through the metaphor of the boat. This is a work that was made not by one artist, but by a collection called ART Republic. It is a brand of the Purple Arts Collection company who provides the curatorial services for the park. It is entitled We Are the World, and it was made on site in 2020 of Mixed Media. There has been more COVID exhibitions in Shanghai in the aftermath of the Wuhan city lockdown. The message is almost always the same, with gratitude to the doctors, nurses, and local government authorities for helping to control and contain the deadly virus. It has now been an entire year since the breakout happened, but as you have heard from news all over the world, China is one of the most safest places. The contact tracing and the way in which they are able to test everybody, they are able to contain this virus better than any country. What you see here also, this idea of the boat, it's not just only doctors. You have strange objects like these cute little nutcrackers. But what is interesting too is that they've also put along with the doctors, the delivery men, the delivery workers. There is no way that during the lockdown that started in Wuhan, but eventually affected every city in China without the help of the delivery men. And you see them here in their yellow helmet and their yellow raincoat, as well as the purple helmet and the blue rain jacket. They have to be visible because they are on their electric scooters, constantly delivering everything from medicine to carrots to everyday implements that we need in order to survive. The delivery men have been honored along with the doctors. Again, this is not something that we would have seen a few years ago, but is now possible. Now we come to this work by Pedro Reyes. He's an artist from Mexico City, born 1972. This is called Unite, and it is made of painted steel. And in fact, from the video, it may be difficult for you to assess, but this piece is immense. If I were to be standing at the bottom, I would barely only come up to the length of the knee. Most of the times in which the Jing'an Sculpture Park launches its new program every 2 years, all of the artists are able to come, not only to make the sculptures on site and to participate in the opening, but this year, due to the pandemic, the only artists foreign artists who are residing in China, as well as Chinese artists residing in China, could participate, which means that artists such as Pedro Reyes could not have joined. So he had to send what was required in order for the fabrication to be done to the gallery, as well as to the mediators. Pedro Reyes is represented by Listen Gallery, a British gallery that has a branch, a gallery, and an office space here in Shanghai. This work mimics a lot of the scaffolding that we see in the city of Shanghai. Shanghai is a constantly transforming city. The fact that I've been here 9 years, and if I go back to the first apartment where we live, I can no longer recognize that neighborhood, mostly because stores that used to be there, very small banana fruit shops, as well as dumpling shops, are now all torn away. And these high-rise offices are built, as well as mega mall complexes. I wonder how the sculpture would have looked different if Pedro Reyes had been able to come to Shanghai and to create his work. For some of you who are not familiar with him, he's an advocate who has done quite a bit with his work to curb the trade of small weapons in Mexico. Oftentimes, he uses confiscated armed weapons, including guns, in order to repurpose them. And just as an example, there's a project that he did in 2008 called Shovels by Guns, in which the Botanical Garden of Culiacan commissioned the artist to do interventions. So Reyes proposed the work on a larger scale, and for every person who donated their personal guns, they were able to receive a coupon for domestic appliances. And with the 1,527 guns that he collected, he made 1,527 shovels, which were used for school children to plant trees. So here I'm taking you around to a body of water. As you can see, this is a work by Antoine Poncet, a French artist born 1928. Perhaps I don't need to provide too much of an introduction or commentary, since we mostly have French artists. So I will now pass on to the sculptural work that was made by the Chinese duo Hao Jingfeng and Wang Lingjie. They're both quite young. Hao Jingfeng, he was born 1985, and his partner Wang Lingjie was born 1984. And this is a really fun piece. As you can see, it's quite interactive. And the title is called Wanna Do Something, Wanna Do Nothing. And it was made on site in 2020. It's made out of stainless steel aluminum, as well as electromechanical equipment. To me, it has this reference of a reflection that's very reminiscent of many of Anish Kapoor's sculptural works that are located out in open spaces. So not only does the viewer can see the reflections, but the park and the bamboo and the water, it is also reflected. Through this mechanical device, every few seconds, it pumps up the smoke. This is a huge hit with a lot of viewers who come to the park, mostly because China is still a very heavy culture of men and some women who smoke. And the way in which that the smoke goes up has this notion where it does look like the sculpture is taking an afternoon smoking break. I took my university students to the park one afternoon as we were discussing public sculpture and public art, and really critiquing and examining what constitutes publicness and what defines public art. We encounter a very large group of elderly Chinese photography group. So they were retired group of people who were learning to use digital cameras, as well as some who were still quite comfortable with their old film camera. So it was a mixed group, and they had stationed themselves right there. And when the sculpture pumped out the mechanical smoke, puffs of smoke, both the group of elderly photographers, as well as there were some grandparents who had brought the 3, 4, 5-year-old preschool children to the park, you could hear this loud gasp of wow, that happened at the same time. So it's nice to see that this artwork excited both the young and the old. Now we come to this very large field, and as you can see around the perimeter is a jogging path. And this scene was captured around 2:30, 3 o'clock, where the jogging path gets really used is after dinner. In China, all over, people believe that after you eat that you should digest and exercise, which means dinner starts quite early, around 5 to 6 o'clock. And so come 7:30, 8 o'clock, there is a traffic jam on the track with both elderly people as well as middle-aged people and perhaps some young people all taking part in jogging. So this work that we're looking at is by Pascal Martin Tailloux, who's born 1966 in Cameroon, South Africa. He lives and works in Ghent, Belgium, as well as on Yaoundé, Cameroon. Now, Pascal Martin Tailloux is no stranger to Shanghai. He was here in Shanghai to participate in the 2012 Shanghai Biennale. He began studying law, but then diverged to become an artist. His sculptural works are often provided in situ with found and discarded objects and materials, often sourced locally. He began creating Pascal's column from 2010. He commented that in his village in Cameroon, there was no skyline to define a city. When he would go to the next village, he would often lose his sense of direction because each village looked the same in the flat landscape. So he used cheap local tin bowls and stacked them one on top of another so as to create a landmark. What you see here are plastic buckets that he was able to source and obtain here in Shanghai. And he built it up as a tree. His linear sculptures reference the totem pole, which can also be interpreted as an axis mundi, a metaphorical link that connects the earth and the heavens and the realm of the mortals to the immortals. He has been using plastic as well as trash bags for quite a while by amassing tons of plastic and bringing it together into a sculptural edifice. He literally binds and weaves that brings the sense of awe as well as grandeur due to its mass and its size. His use of cheap objects, including discarded trash bags and plastic buckets, speak volumes about contemporary life's inextricable link with the political economics of consumerism, migration, and ecological devastation. And so here, I'm going to pause just for a short 2 minutes to introduce one of my inspirations, Zoe Vasseur. I've had the chance to get to know Zoe as a friend and a colleague here in Shanghai for 5 years, and she has taught me so much about China's culture and history. Traces, imprints, and memory are Zoe Vasseur's inspiration. She's a French artist who graduated from the National Superior School of Decorative Arts in Paris with a Master's of Art, including 1 term at Central St. Martin's as an Erasmus exchange student in London. After 15 years of working on commission as art director in the fields of art and fashion, China gave Zoe the chance to focus solely on sculpture. Living between Shanghai and Paris, she creates bronze sculptures. Zoe received several large-scale outdoor commissions in China, including the one for the Jing'an International Sculpture Park in Shanghai. To date, I'd like to stress she's the only French female artist represented in this park. Like photographers, she creates objectography. Her father was a photographer, and she grew up with black and white photographs as wallpapers in her home. The starting point of her work is always an object, fleeting, forgotten, or endangered, and a witness to the passing of time. She frames it, molds it, highlighting the details or secrets, and casts it in bronze to make it timeless. Her inspiration also lies in words, quotations, and forgotten names, which she engraves upon the bronze. Zoe combines embedded texts and daily objects to question the selection of our collective memory. Her obsession is giving visual voice to objects. Please help me welcome Zoe Vasseur. Zoe?
Julie, thank you so much for your presentation. It's been wonderful. And now we are leaving Shanghai for a few moments to go to Paris, where Zoe is. If she's, where is Zoe? Maybe she needs to, oh, maybe I need to unmute her. I don't think she was muted, but let's see. Zoe. Unmute. Zoe, you need to unmute yourself. Yeah, that's good.
I'm here.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Zoe. Thank you. Zoe, we say Zoe, but today you're Zoe.
So, thank you, Julie, for this introduction. I don't know if I have anything more to say. Maybe we can start again the video to go to the sculpture. Yes. So my sculpture is named Doors to Memory. It's the achievement of a series on Shanghai memory, as Julie said. So for 5 years, I've been tracing secrets and hidden parts of the city. Shanghai, as you saw maybe in the video, is a city of contrast. There is rich and poor, old and new, construction and destruction. And we can say that frenzy and tradition like Tai Chi rub shoulders. To me, I discovered that the bricks of Shanghai, which are, you can see on the background, are quite special. First, they are handmade, they are not cooked. So it's a very Chinese way to do things. And I went to different districts and I discovered that bricks are stamped on the edge with some signs. So on industrial district, you will see slogan like, let's work together. On rich area, let's say like posh ones, it's the name of the owner. And here in Si Wen Li, which is like a place which is quite popular, the sign stamped on the edge of the brick will be auspicious sign. But those signs are hidden in the wall, in the mortar. And I revealed it because I discovered that kind of DNA of the city. So here is the eternity knot that protects family and houses. And I put it at the eye level for people to rediscover this sign, which was hidden. So after I installed those two vertical bricks, and as Julie said, I always wrote words on my bronze. So here I play with the contrast and the opposite between balance and under bracket. I put unbalance and urban and under bracket urban. It's to play with both meanings and its opposite. And it's a way to question the new balance the city will have to find. Shanghai is in a huge mutation. I mean, they throw the old, they get rid of the old to embrace modernity. But at the same time, this, let's say, patrimony is disappearing. So my idea was to frame and to give attention to this little things that brick seems to be almost nothing, but they are full of meanings and of history of Shanghai. So I use the frame as you frame a beloved photograph or something important to you. So I use like two very large frames and I've put the brick in it and I enlarge the bricks to point to those details. And with those two big frames, people are able to walk through the sculpture. So I wanted to, I mean, those frames have two roles, let's say, calling attention to those bricks that nobody look at and knows the story, and framing the surrounding architectural landscape, which is the Lilong the bricks came from. which are just behind the sculpture. I mean, public art is really a gift. When I had this commission, I've never made before like a large sculpture, and suddenly you give your sculpture to the public, and people can, I mean, go through, look around, discover, and it's no more your sculpture, but you see it with different eyes each time you go.
Thank you so much, Zoe. That was fabulous. When you speak about this this fantastic piece, I remember the time when we were together in Shanghai and you took me for a tour, which was absolutely fabulous. And we ended in an old house of Shanghai.
Yes.
Ming 17th century, something like that. Rim, I'm going to ask you to stop sharing your screen. You have?
Yes, she has.
Yes. Okay, so I can, you know, I could show you because I went and can you see the pictures now here?
Yeah.
Yes, so those are the pictures, some of the pictures that I took of this place. Actually, I should have told you to have a look at this amazing house. I didn't take all the pictures, but here you can see the elements that were the source of your inspiration. Am I correct?
Yes, I worked with Madame Guo, which is an old lady who preserved her house. The house is a huge house, and she's living there alone, fighting against the government and especially to the real estate guys, which are just so excited by having this place. And so she preserves stuff like this, a little bit like a kind of an old museum. She puts like different parts of the house that are completely falling down. And I use some bricks from Mrs. Guo, because she gets bricks with even like older signs, which are like really like very, as you can see here on this door, those are doors, all the very Chinese patterns, which are little by little disappearing. So I use those patterns also, yes, to do some sculpture.
So basically what you did when you arrived in Shanghai, first you learned a little Chinese, and then you took your best, you took yourself, I would say, into all these lost places where you would find some old elements, some old bricks of the history of Shanghai, of the traditional history of the Ming period, of all these traditional period of Shanghai.
But
right?
even more recent one. To be honest, I was really not in love with Chinese aesthetic, really. But then when I arrived there, I discovered that it's more than only visual. It's also handcraft, which are disappearing. It's not only the object in itself. It's the way to do the object and all the history and the story around the object. And little by little, I went to many destruction sites, and I start to collect pieces and to discover that on each pieces, which is normally like an everyday regular object or part of a house, there is a story in it. And that's, I think, something very interesting, how in China, stories are into objects and details. And Chinese facade, you could read it from top to the bottom, and it's a full story when you know about it. So I knew nothing about it. So I start to be closer from scholar and researcher, and specifically a young guy who became a very good friend. And we went to many construction sites, and to go and dig and understand, and he explained me a lot about the Shanghai houses, which are called Shikumen Lilong, which are a mix between Chinese and European habitation. And I learned little by little, and that's thanks to them, I've been able to bring, I mean, to show those secrets, and even some Chinese have no clue about it. So for the Eternity knot, I mean, Chinese told me, but I had no idea we had that on our wall. So it's like to reveal something about the past, and the past which is disappearing.
Yeah, that's very interesting, and I think that being a French artist, you're making a link between your history as a French and European and Asia, which is very interesting, and that's it's fabulous that now you've been asked to have this permanent sculpture in the Jiahan Sculpture Park. You also have another sculpture somewhere in Shanghai.
Yeah, in a private garden.
In a private garden, and also, which is amazing, is that you went to I don't know how to say a fonderie in English, but for many years, yeah. So you've gone there, spoke Chinese to the people, and tried to explain how to make things. And well, you do speak Chinese. I've witnessed that.
At the factory, hopefully we draw a lot.
Yeah. Okay, so we have a question for you, Zoe, and then we'll go back to Julie. We have questions for you, Julie, as well. So Zoe, could you tell us about the path that has drawn you from the sculpture of traditional objects and ancestral Chinese to monumental sculpture? Thank you. That was a question written in French that I had to translate in English. So please rewrite your questions in English.
Well, to make a long story short, it has been quite organic. As I said, I met some searcher to learn about Shanghai's Lilong, and they sent me some curators like Peter from the Jiahan Sculpture Park. And I don't know how to say, I've been really lucky because I was able to stay in my grotto and just work and go to the bronze factory. And Chinese were coming to me. They are super curious. They really want to learn about everything. And maybe, as you said, as I was French, looking at their past and their patrimony, they were quite surprised. But it had been very simple. And Peter came and he told me, well, we have a show starting within 4 months. Can you do something? And so, I had, as an artist, I had no communication or representation to do. I had just to do my work. And they came to me. And I must admit, I would have never think about doing that. But suddenly, when the opportunity comes, in China, you feel comfortable. And you say, well, okay, they believe in me, let's go. So and I will never thank them enough, because I would like to do only public art. It's a wonderful gift. There is no comparison with any kind of other commission.
So thank you so much. That was fantastic to discover your work. Thank you so much, Zoe, for introducing me and us, the BNC Club, to Julie, and to organize this fantastic webinar. We're not done yet. I wanted to, we have just a new question that had, so where is the question? I understand, Zoe, I understand you are back in France. So are you still working on memory, or was it dedicated to Shanghai?
No, I continue to work on memory. Memory is really my obsession, let's say. Maybe because I've got a bad memory, so I'm aware of all the distortion and all what we change in our souvenir. And I always take an object which are disappearing, as Julie said. And in China, I use everyday object, and I ask, and the words I engrave upon it was thought-provoking words. And in France, I use more like, because we protect very well our patrimony, but what we protect less is our historical patrimony. So I work more on fold papers, drape, or tree barks, and I engrave names of forgotten women, because in France that's the part we lost through history. So in China it was patrimony, and here it's more like a part of history and women history in particular.
Okay, so as soon as we are able to travel again, we'll go to Shanghai and discover you will show us your window again, Julie, before the end of this webinar. Show us Shanghai and where is the Tate Modern going to be built in Shanghai. So we are, all of us, very impatient to travel and to visit this fantastic town. But in the meantime, Zoe, we will discover you soon in France, in a sculpture park as well, in Provence, le domaine des Andéoles. So that for our members, we have many travels to organize. So Lucy, to go back to you, we have a question. Does the sculpture park continue commissioning new works? The answer is yes, I think. We saw the work related to the pandemic, which is new, of course.
Yes. So how the sculpture park operates is it works in three different parts. So as you saw, in regards to, there's permanent works that were in which it goes into the park and the Jing'an district decides to retain. So they keep those. And then they do have new commission works that's only shown for the duration of this 3-month Biennale time period. For example, Pedro Reyes's work will mostly go back to either the artist or to Listen Gallery. And then the third part are these collaborative works. This is not the first year that they've done this. It was 2 years ago. They brought university students from a design school and gave them a space for them to do experimental type of work. And that's on a short-term commission. And it's to inspire the next generation of artists. So there's various methods and processes in which it's done. I am actually taking my own art group there in April to see the cherry blossom. And there's a part of me that feels a little hesitant in going because I was just there 2 days ago, as I was telling Zoe, and all of the sculptures are still there, but I do fear that by the time I go in April to see the cherry blossom, that at least those works that were only there temporarily will be gone. But Zoe's will be there, and Barbara's work is there, and Armand's work is there. So there will still be some permanent works on display. And then come in another year and a half, we'll see new works. And hopefully by then, all of the borders will be opened and you will be able to visit the park in person. So we have to keep our hopes up and we have to keep our spirits up because that day will come.
Okay, Julie, before we end this webinar, we have a few minutes. I wanted to ask you a question. As you've been living in Shanghai for, you said that, 10 years. Could you tell us your personal experience of the town when you arrived and what was there, which museums were there, which galleries were there, and what is happening now, and what's in Shanghai and also in the rest of China, if you have time. That could be the object of a personal long talk. But there's been an incredible development The Centre Pompidou has opened, the Tate Modern is going to open, the V&A, not in Shanghai, but Victoria and Albert Museum, and all these galleries, all these Almin Reich and Emmanuel Perrotin and Levi Gorby, I don't know. So it would be fabulous for us to hear about your experience and how do you analyze this?
Sure. In fact, this is a question that I get the most. I was just on Zoom with Photo Ireland just 2 days ago, and they asked the same question. And I get this from Korea, from Japan, United States. When I first arrived in Shanghai, which was August 2011, there were barely 5 art museums, and that's including even the traditional museum that has antiquities. I've been researching and writing about the growth of museums and public art and what constitute, just because it's in a museum, does that qualify it as public art in a sense? How public is a museum when it's owned by one person? Currently, we are capping out at 37, and this is just art museums. We're not talking, this is not the car museum. This doesn't include the foot binding museum or even the Kung Fu museum. And Jackie Chan has his own museum here in Shanghai as well. This is strictly just art museums. I stopped counting galleries mostly because I have a reporter friend who was thinking about doing a book, and she had to update her list on a monthly basis that the publisher wouldn't take it, because by the time the book came out, the list would be completely outdated. There's constant openings and closures of art galleries. And then there's a whole consortium of Chinese art galleries that are off the radar of most English-speaking expats, in the sense that you really have to be in with the Chinese in crowd to be able to know about these. The idea of collecting in China has a very long history, but it's very different from the idea of collecting in, say, North America or Europe. In China, the word for collecting means to hide it from view. So it's this sense of you're accumulating precious objects and you're accumulating culture, but it's not for the sense of it being displayed, but it's the sense that it's only shared in the privacy of intimate circles of either family or your intimate friends. And so that whole paradigm is changing, because we are having more and more younger generation of what we call the second generation of wealthy. They are helping their parents invest their money that they made. So the recent art fair brought in some late 20-year-olds and 30-year-olds who are collecting. So that's the situation in the art market with galleries. Because of the pandemic, Shanghai had its art fair in November, which was Westbund and 021. And since they've been open, which is about 5 years, they had the best year. A lot of the artworks were sold out, the galleries sold out, and many of the artists in the galleries did quite well. As for the museums, I would say we have issues. There are problems, because in one city, despite the fact that we have such a large population, seriously, do we need over 30 art museums in one location? That also means that the resources are spread pretty thin. We have more and more younger Chinese who are completely bilingual. When I first came to China, there was a huge demand for me to provide English language reviews and content. That's no longer the case, mostly because many of the young Chinese who are being educated in Paris, New York, London, even Tel Aviv, they're coming back, and some of them are not only duolingual, they are also trilingual. So but there's only a small percentage of them. And how do you spread these young men and women across many of these museums? You cannot, which means they're having to hire staff who comes with the background in real estate, journalism, marketing, of which some of it can go into the right area of museum operation. But when it comes to curatorial, you're really stretching them thin. We have some museums that has excellent exhibitions, and 3, 4, 6 months later, they'll have another exhibition, which is just poorly put together and put together at the last minute. Personally, I am calling for museum reform. I personally would like to see some of these museums that are able to pool the resources and consolidate. As to whether that's going to happen in our lifetime, many of my Chinese friends says that won't. But it's the sense of how do we build not only a solid and a reputable museum, but a sustainable museum. Do we constantly have to wait for Centre Pompidou, Tate Modern, V&A to come and dictate to the Chinese people, this is how it should be done? Or can we rely on the talent and the intelligence of many of the young generation of not only those who studied abroad, but who are studying here in China? Some of the art academies are offering PhDs in curatorial studies, art history. There's a huge interest in art history, not only in Western art history, but also China, the way in which Chinese art history ought to be assessed. So I have hope. I feel that since I've been here, which is almost a decade, there has been some improvements in the sense of there used to be no docent guided tours. And I would say in about 90% of the museum, they still don't have it. But the Power Station has inducted students to lead certain docent talks. There's a little bit of movement that's happening. But as to museums, I really believe we have way too many museums. And time and foot traffic will also dictate what will be the future of these museums, because with the ticket prices also going up, some of it used to be very affordable, something like $3 when I first got here. Now there's one ticket that can cost as much as $30, $40 for a single entry. So all of this is going to play into how a museum can stay operational, continue to hold worthwhile exhibitions, and most importantly, to retain good staff. Because without the longevity of the staff, then the program suffers. And when a program suffers, then there's long-term consequences. So that is the status of the gallery and the museum scene in Shanghai in a nutshell.
Thank you so much. I have so you mentioned the Power Station, which is near the Bund, right?
It's in the riverfront. It's halfway between the Bund and the West Bund, correct. It's a state contemporary art museum.
Yes. In your opinion, which are the best contemporary art museums in Shanghai?
Yes. So if I could probably name the top 3, I would say the number 1 up there is the Rockbund Art Museum. It is not a large museum. It is located on the Bund. In fact, it is one of the oldest buildings that's located on that street. In the recent years, on that same street, Listen Gallery, Farathon, as well as Almond Rush have come in. So if you want to visit the art scene in Shanghai, there are 3 major destination places. So one is by the Bund, where this Rockbund Art Museum is. The reason why they run a good program is it is backed by a real estate company, but the owner, who is a couple, Thomas and Lin Wu, they don't provide too much of an input aside from providing financial resources for the running of the museum. They have a legitimate board of directors who guides the museum, including the curatorial program. And although that board changes, eminent curators and scholars, including Hu Hanru and Alexandra Monroe from the Guggenheim, have sat or still continues to sit on that board. So they do have a French Tahitian curator, but there's quite a bit of input and a collaboration that happens. So in that sense, it's not to say, I've actually written about them. It's not to say that they hit all their marks all the time. I don't think no museum in the world can ever do that, but the rate that they hit the mark is quite high. The way they collaborate with nonprofit sites, they experiment. They're currently working on a local community project. And so the way that they're able to think outside the box, I think, is quite unique and superior in a way that a museum is operating in Shanghai. My number 2 pick would be the Power Station of Art. It is public. It is guided by the Shanghai government. They are funded well, although there's always complaint that there isn't enough money. But the deputy director, she has very good ties to France, and she works with another Chinese curator who is based in France, Fei Dawei, and they were able to bring the Christian Boltanski solo exhibition, which was groundbreaking in every single way, the way it was curated. And of course, they brought the French curator who's been working with Boltanski for many, many years, the one who curated the Magicians of the Earth.
Jean-Hubert Martin.
Yes, and so when you have someone of his caliber.
Yes, he was the director of the Centre Pompidou in a previous life.
That's right. So when you have someone of that prestige and his experience, the Power Station was transformed in a way that when I walked into that space, I've been reviewing exhibitions in that space since 2012. I couldn't get my bearings. It felt so different because he had transformed the same space with a vision in ways that none of us could have expected. And so collaboration is an important aspect, because I think while many Chinese curators have excellent ideas, when you have an international cooperation and interchange, you're always going to get something so much more innovative, something more creative than if you were to go about it alone. As for my 3rd pick, wow, that's a hard one. There's several, and then I would qualify these more as nonprofit spaces, as opposed to, say, a museum that is run by a private owner. And here there's several. There's the Duolin Museum, which is really off of everyone's radar, but they have a new curator who's looking at the history of Shanghai and inviting many of the local curators. And the fact that we do have so many foreign galleries that have come into Shanghai in the last 3 years, and there has been a huge interest by the Chinese collectors to collect a lot of these big name brands, because it also speaks about their wealth and their prestige, that oftentimes we forget to showcase a lot of local and Chinese artists. And this is China. We should be supporting Chinese artists. And so that would be a nonprofit space. I just got back from Guangzhou.
I'm sorry, I did not understand the name of the 3rd museum.
It's called Duolin. Duolin, it's really off the radar. It's a really small museum in Hongkou district. It's quite small, and they have been dormant for about 5 years. But then just recently, they had a major overhaul in staff, And the last 3 exhibitions I went to go see there, I was quite impressed. They had an exhibition that centered on autism in China. Again, this is a topic that no private museum will touch. And this is a joint museum versus that's in collaboration with the real estate company and the area of Hong Kong where the Duolin Museum is located. The fact that they were willing to take on a topic that most people in society will not discuss, and it was visually done quite well. It was stunning, and it talked about a topic that is very relevant and that we should be talking about now. The last one that I went to see was black and white photographs of parks, and it was curated by one of Shanghai's notable photography historian. And it's looking at not just black and white pictures of parks in Shanghai, but again, this discussion that I'm also interested in, which is what constitutes a park to be public? Just because we don't pay money. This is just like the Jing'an Sculpture Park. I ended up writing a 28-page feature on it, examining. Just because we don't pay doesn't make it public. Just because anyone can go in doesn't make it public. We have many public parks and we have sculpture parks in Shanghai, but how can we expand this discussion about what constitute public art? The Jing'an Sculpture Park that we showed you is a fine example because it hits a lot of the benchmarks that a critic and an art historian such as myself that I'm looking at. Not only is it accessible and is it free of charge, but as we discuss in the selected artworks, that a lot of these artworks are not decorative. They're not just in there for people to take photographs, but by looking at it and by engaging with the wall text. And that's another thing. It's very difficult to find wall text nowadays in most museums or even galleries. But the fact that there's some form of text that engages the people to deeper thinking. And what do these artworks then convey about what's happening in society now within a certain local culture and its relationship to the global context? I think that's the difficulty, and that's what constitutes definitively a good work of art, say, in my definition, and what I'm looking at in regards to of artistic expression and how it can help each and every one of us to explore our society in a meaningful way.
Okay, so thank you so much, Julie. We understand that you have lots to say on this subject, so I'm going to stop asking questions. But that was fantastic, and I really hope that we will continue this conversation with you. I would like again to thank you for your time and this incredible amount of work you've been doing, and Zoe Vessière as well for organizing this webinar, sending some people to film the park, daytime, evening time, sunny time, and also raining day, because now it's 7 p.m. in Shanghai, so it's the night. And I would like also to thank Alexandra Fin from Asia Now, that has been participating in this webinar to communicate it among her community of incredible followers that and that you have to meet each other, Julie and Alexandra, for her fair, which is a fantastic fair in Paris that happened during FIAC. And she was one of the rare to have a whole fair dedicated to Asian art with the pandemic. And so we need to really encourage all these initiatives. Before we say goodbye, if you could go back to your window and show us Shanghai by night, and the area where is going to be the Tate Modern, and that's going to be maybe the subject of our future talk.
Yes. So here we go. This is the view right outside my window. And this is Pudong, which is south of the river. So here are the 3 tallest buildings in all of China. We have the blue building is the Shanghai World Financial Center. And then the one with the lighted top is the Jinmao Tower that's built to resemble a pagoda. And the one that is so tall there, you could see the top there, that is the Shanghai Tower, which is also known as the Dragon Tower. It's difficult to see at night, but it spirals. The actual building is built in a double sheath glass, and it spirals so as to deal with the high wind that is held up here. And so this is the downtown financial district. And literally 10 minutes walk from here is where the Tate Modern is being built. And the rate that it's being built is remarkable because, of course, all construction stopped from January to about April and May. And then constructions picked up in July. And I go running by the area just to keep an eye on it. And it looks like it's almost finished. I heard from a good friend who's working at the Tate branch here in Pudong that they are hoping to have the opening by March. At first, I wasn't for sure, but then after I saw the building today, I thought, well, this is China. I think it's possible. So here's the final view, and it has been such a joy. Thank you so much, Anne-Pierre. Thank you so much, Zoe. I can't wait to see you in person back here in Shanghai. I miss you so much.
Thank you so much, Julie. Thank you. Thank you, Zoe. Thank you all for staying a bit over time, and hope to see you very, very soon. Thank you so much. Have a great day and night.
Bye-bye.
Bye.